Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1010A, and today's date is June 29th, 2016, and the title of the episode is, Did the Central Bankers Plan the Brexit to Create an EU Empire? Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, what a day on the market. Here we have 2 days now where the market has been pushed up, but something very interestingly, gold has stayed above 1,300. And this is something that we do need to watch. We've been talking about this quite a bit, where we need to watch where gold goes, because when we see gold moving up by $70, $80, $100, $150, this is the signal. And if you notice, these jumps are getting larger and larger, and the suppressions, it's getting more and more difficult to push this down. Now, does this mean that they won't be able to push this down below 1,300? No, that's not what this means. They could try to do it, and we're going to have to watch that situation very carefully. Now, out in the Eurozone, we see the economic confidence, well, it has dipped in June. It edged lower, as the corporate media likes to say, and it went down from 104.6 to 104.4, and we can see right now that the reason for this is what's happening with the Brexit, what's going on in Europe. And when we look at this, we see the business climate indicator. That has also declined by 0.22 for the month from 0.26. And we can see that things are continually deteriorating. Nothing is improving here. Yes, we do have our little bump ups, but what happens once we have this little spike or this little surge, all of a sudden it drops even larger as we move down, and the trend is continually moving downward. And when we look at the spending here in the United States, back in April, we know gas prices started to go up, and everyone was like, oh, look, spending is all out there again. But now gas prices have kind of leveled off, and we see that spending, guess what, in May, it has dropped back down. And spending is going nowhere. And why is this? Well, income is dropping. It is the weakest since March 2014. People are being laid off. People don't have the ability to save. People are worried about their jobs. They're not out there spending in retail. And we have a major problem here. Now, we're starting to see real estate, it's starting to fall apart, which is very odd because during this period of time, the summer, the hot months, no pun intended there, this is when real estate really picks up. When you go into the spring, you go into the summer, most of the people want to be in their homes right before school. They want to be settled in. It's warm, flowers are blooming, and everyone is excited. And usually winter is the time where it's not so great. And what we're seeing right now is that things are really rapidly falling apart. Prices are coming down. Pending home sales, they've plunged by 3.7%. This is the biggest drop since May of 2010. Sales declined in all 4 regions. And what we're seeing right now, this is the first annual drop in home sales in 2 years. Now, of course, they're out there blaming supply. There's not enough supply. People just can't find the right house. Well, when we look at all the economic indicators and we look at what's going on here, we see that maybe people just can't afford it, because what we're seeing is that people aren't even applying for mortgages. I mean, they're at historical low interest rates right now. You would think people would be running to the banks to take out loans, but we don't see this. We don't see this at all. Actually, going back to 2013, as interest rates continually came down, mortgage companies were laying off people, tens of thousands. And this was the same time Obama was in Phoenix back in 2013, telling everyone that the housing market is rebounding. Well, all of this was created by bubbles. It was pumped up, and the housing market is declining right now. We see the delinquency rate on loans. Well, it is getting worse. And what we're seeing right now is the delinquency rate is the most useful indicator for credit stress. And it tells us that we have major problems here, because the delinquency rate on commercial and industrial loans, it has increased by 50%. And in a single quarter, delinquency rates in the U.S. banking sector exploded from 1% to 1.5%. So we can see the cycle has completely turned. And the delinquency rate in Europe, it is also on the rise. Actually, Italian banks, it's a disaster there. They have very high delinquency rates right now, and they are in trouble. Now, we know the Fed was out there talking about how they were going to increase the interest rates. We're going to do a rate hike. It's coming up soon. And what we're seeing right now is that's off the table because of the Brexit. There is a 0% chance right now that there's going to be any type of rate hike. Well, we never really thought there was going to be a rate hike again. There's a 23% chance of a rate cut. Well, we know that Japan, we know that Europe, they're in negative interest rate territory. And we can see right now, this is exactly where the U.S. is headed, because as the debt continually grows, as the economy continually weakens, as everything, all the economic indicators continually deteriorate, there's no other place for the central banks to go except into negative territory to keep the system alive. We see out in Puerto Rico, the Senate, they have voted 68 to 32, and they passed the measure to bail out Puerto Rico. They're going to restructure the $70 billion in debt, and they're going to establish an outside control board to take control of Puerto Rico. And we know that Obama's going to sign this because he supports the package, and they're going to have to do this very, very quickly. By tomorrow, it most likely will be signed. And we know from the beginning that they weren't going to let Puerto Rico default because they need to keep the system operational. And we can see the Brexit, it is spreading throughout Europe, and government employees, individuals, countries, they're all looking to have some type of referendum. They're realizing what the European Union really is. And Marine Le Pen wrote an argument that said we need to end the EU right now because each of the 28 countries that constitute it has slowly lost its democratic prerogatives to commissions and councils with no popular mandate. Every nation in the Union has had to apply laws it did not want for itself. Member nations no longer determine their own budgets. They are called upon to open their borders against their will. And one thing is certain, Britain's departure from the European Union will not make the Union more democratic. Well, I agree with that completely. I mean, this is a non-elected body of individuals making decisions for all of these different countries. Now remember, this is a central bank organization. They don't want the people to make decisions. But we can see there's confusion going on. There's a kind of a stall tactic going on right now. We see the European Union, they're trying to push the UK into enacting Article 50. We see the UK saying, and this is coming from Cameron, let's wait. This is a very interesting situation. And this might be by design, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But John Kerry is out there, and he is saying that, you know something, United Kingdom, it could be reversed, the decision that, to leave the European Union. Maybe we can reverse it. He said this is a very complicated divorce. There are a number of ways to walk back the vote. And we can see right now, this might be part of their plan. Because we understand the central bankers, they like control. They like to control people. They like to control governments. They put countries into debt. They have a debt-based system, which by design will impoverish a country, enslave a people. And this Brexit, while other people are out there saying this is a great thing, which I agree, it is a good thing that they're trying to get away from a central banking system, I have to wonder, and when I look at the information, was this by design? Think about this for a second. We understand false flags, where the governments, the central bankers, will use an incident and try to make people do something they want. When we look at this, was it really the idea to have the UK remain in the EU? Or were they trying to convince everyone that's what was their plan and make the people feel they had a choice? Remember, central bankers, they plan out their moves, they're devious, they like control. So when we look at the Brexit, this might actually help them. This might not destroy them. I know a lot of people are saying this is going to break up the EU. I mean, I hope it does. I hope the EU breaks apart. But when I try to look into the minds of the central bankers, I see something very different. Because we see that the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen, used the Brexit as the primary reason for the latest rate hike delay, mentioning that such conditions may influence for some time to come. This indicates she may have had prior knowledge of the Brexit. The world's central bankers all convened in Basel, Switzerland, very interestingly, to have their meeting, which has no minutes or anything like that, right before the Brexit vote commenced. We see the breakdown of the EU, whether partial or total, can be used as leverage for a larger and more centralized global power structure. Think about what they're doing right now. They're looking to create an EU super state, an EU empire, where they're going to take away the sovereignty of each and every one of these countries. They're delaying the exit. This is what the UK is doing. The EU is, on the other hand, trying to force them into removing themselves, saying, you know what, we don't want you. Now, this is like mind games here. We have Kerry coming out saying, well, maybe there's a way of, having the UK come back in. So this tells me they're already planning something. And if the UK, through negotiations or better deals or some type of an event, does come back into the EU, it's going to be under certain conditions to create this EU empire, where they're going to have more control, more centralization. Because the central bankers, they don't give up that easily. They don't just say, you know what? Oh, the people decided. Let them just do what they want. To me, this is starting to look like this was planned. I know everyone's out there saying Soros lost a lot of money on this because he was betting that they were going to remain. But if you look at all his other investments, he made a huge amount of money off of this. He lost a very little bit. He gained a lot. So he kind of knew what was happening. But to convince everyone that he had no idea, we can see how this was created. And a lot of these things just happened all at once. So when we look at this, was this some type of false flag, if you will, to make the people believe that they had a choice, which this choice will never go anywhere? And this is something that we have to watch, because if it comes down to it, and they make a deal where the UK actually doesn't leave, and they're put back into the EU, or if they do leave and the EU creates this EU empire with more control, with more centralization, guess what? They're not dissolved. They're more powerful. They're creating an EU army, separate and apart from NATO. And this is what we need to watch. Because in my mind, everything that I've been looking at. And when I delve deep into it, it seems like this was pre-planned. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.